Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be showing you how to configure a NAT type on Xbox 360. Now, before we can configure NAT type, we need to understand what it is and what it does. The NAT type, or Network Address Translation, acts kind of like a secondary firewall between you and the internet source that you're trying to access. Now, on Xbox Live, there are three types of NATs, or three types of NATs in general, that can be viewed and displayed on your console. The first is open, which is probably the most preferred type, but also the most least common type, because a lot of people do not fully understand how to modify it, and most people don't really pay attention to it. They just think that they're having a bad connection or can't connect to certain games or friends, that it's just Xbox Live and don't look no farther than that. A moderate NAT, which is what most of us have, is an okay NAT type, but it can cause a few problems that I'll go into in a few minutes. A strict NAT is the less common one and also the most problematic. A strict NAT can only connect to open NATs, and therefore on Xbox Live this becomes a real hassle. Basically what happens with a strict NAT is, let's say a host of the game has an open NAT type. If you join into this game, you're fine. You're playing along, everything's going great. Well, all of a sudden you get kicked out and it says unable to connect to host. What's happened here is someone with a moderate NAT has come into the game. Once this happens, it kicks the strict because their firewall blocks the connection and it severs the connection to the server, or to the host. Strict NATs are a difficult problem with peer-to-peer games like Call of Duty, since most people do not have open NATs. The player with a strict NAT won't be able to find many joinable games, won't be able to connect to most parties, and won't be able to do most everything on Xbox Live because of this. Also, if the player with a strict NAT does join a game, like I said, if another player joins in with a moderate, they get kicked. And this is it's a very big hassle, because when you don't know what it is, it makes it hard to justify what's going on, and you usually blame Xbox Live or the game itself. Now, the problem with a lot of the games and a lot of the consoles that we have now is it will show that you have a moderate NAT type when in all reality you actually have a strict. Now, this happens because the software it's difficult for the software to read what NAT type you have, because a lot of the routers are different, a lot of the settings on the routers are different, the way the NAT type is displayed, and it just makes it difficult. So it may show that you have a moderate NAT type and yet you can't connect or join any games. This is why. Now, the first thing you need to do is realize that some of the ISPs have their own NAT type, which means no matter what you do, it's going to be up to the internet service provider to fix this problem. Now, in my experience, a lot of the internet service providers leave it up to the individual router. So you're not going to run into this a lot, but keep in mind that there is some things that this will not help with. But for, I'd say 90% of the people, this will help. Now, the first thing you need to do is find where and what your NAT type is. In order to do this, I'm going to use Black Ops 2 on the 360. Now, the first thing you need to do is connect to the internet, which you should be able to do no matter what your NAT type is. That's not where the problem lies. It's connected to other people like my friends here. You want to look down here in the bottom right hand corner. You'll see NAT type right next to the party privacy and the friends button, and it says moderate. Now, this is where everything happens that you can't connect to a game. This is the reason right here, among other things, but this will be the main reason. Now, let's say my friend IG Flying Remix here has an open NAT, which he does because he's my cousin and I know this. If I connect to him and I have a strict NAT type, I'm fine. But let's say his friend Ross the Boss comes in and he has a moderate. I'm kicked instantly. Now, you're going to want to go to options to find, you could see it here, but for more detailed information, you want to go to options. And once you get into options, there's going to be a button down here. You can't really see it on this screen because my camera's not that good. But you're going to want to press the back button, and it shows system info. Now here what you're going to look for is the NAT type, which is moderate like we've seen before. And you're also going to want to identify the IP address. Now this is one way you can do it by going here. It's 10.0.0.9. This is going to vary depending on what router you have. It might be 192, it might be 179, it might be anything. So you're going to want to look for this number. This is the IP address for the server at Call of Duty, which is really cool. If you know anything about networking, this is really nice. But now we're going to want to go to the console itself, and you're going to have to figure out your IP address. Now, that's one way to do it, but if you don't have access to that game and you know it's a modded NAT, this is another way you can do it. Click on System, and it's going to show this menu. You're going to want to click on Console Settings. Oh, I'm sorry. You're going to click on Network Settings. And then you're going to go ahead and click Wired Network. Now, I'm using Wired Network here because of the demonstration, but most of the time I use a wireless network. Now, once you're here, you're going to want to hit Configure Network, and your IP address is going to be shown below this. Now, this is the wireless mode. It's off. If it was wireless mode, this would be replaced with this, and then this would come down here. So this is your gateway for your network, whatever it may be. This is going to be your SONET mask, which we won't need. And then, of course, this is going to be your IP address, which is 0.9. Now, write down that information, and we're going to go ahead and go back. Minimize this. Now, there's a website here called portforward.com. It's right here. Go ahead and highlight that for you. Oops. That's not what I meant to do. Okay. Now, from here, there is a tutorial to do this, that if you need further assistance, you can do it. And this is also how you're going to find which ports that are going to be forward. You're going to go to Ports. You're going to want to scroll all the way down to the X's. And at the top, you should see Xbox Live 360, which is here. Now, these are the ports you have to do. You want to go ahead and write those down because you're definitely going to have those. There's another one, which is not here, that's used for Video Connect, and that's not one we're going to have to worry about because I don't use Connect, but if you do, it's also there. Now, in order to access our router, we're going to have to enter our network address. Now, this depends on the router that you have. You'll need to get into your paperwork or make sure you know which number this is because they differ. My cousin's is 192 at his house. I've helped configure his router, and his is 192 point whatever. So make sure you know which one it is. Now, if you take that IP address and you find which one it is here, in this case it's going to be here. Now, the name on the Xbox, unless you have configured it, I'm not exactly sure if you even can configure it. It's going to show up as a MAC address, as a address that, you know, it's already in the system, it can't be changed. And I don't think you can actually define another name on the Xbox itself. I know you can, like here, but like on the HP here you can configure it, but I'm not sure about that. That's a whole nother video. So basically what you're going to do, there's two things you can do here. Now, the first thing you're going to have to do is go to Security and click Services and click Port Forwarding. Now, the port forwarding guide explains that you need a static IP address. You need that if yours doesn't already have one. Now, mine already had a static IP, so I didn't have to do that. But just in case, let me show you how to do that. You come here to Static IP, which is in the Advanced section. Now, keep in mind that it's going to be different depending on which router you have. Each router has their own GUI and their own interface. Now, here is your static IP address, and it says mine is currently disabled. Now, on mine, you don't actually have to have one. For some odd reason, you don't actually have to have one on mine, but you do have to have it on most. But on mine, it's unnecessary because I'm going to use another method that is easier than port forwarding to get the open NAT. But just in case, if you want to, the modem must restart in order to configure it to take effect, so make sure no one's connected. I'm not going to do it here because it'll cancel out all my browsers, but that's how you have to do it. But just for the case of this, I'm just going to show you how to do port forwarding. I want to go back to Security, go to Services, Port Forwarding. Now, here's where you want to enter those numbers. Now, what this is going to do, there's ports that are on your router that when the connection is sent, it's sent through those ports, but when it comes back, it takes ports and sends it out certain ports, and then when it comes back, it's coming through other ports. And what this does is if those ports are closed, it only receives certain information rather than all of it. So what you're going to want to do, now this right here, the UPnP is basically if you have multiple Xbox 360s or multiple devices. In my house I do not, so I do not need this. Okay, now you're going to want to select new custom service. Now what this will do, it'll allow you to enter the numbers that you want to do and all that. Now for this, we're just going to enter Xbox Live, just so we'll know what it is. Now you're going to want to enter those numbers. The first one is 53, and you're going to want to enter start, end, LAN, and all that the same number. And click add, so you can add another one. The next one is 80. Add again. The next one is 88. Click add again. 1863 is the next number. Click add again. And the last is 3074. Now just a little bit of information. Each game in on Xbox Live has its own ports, so there's tons and tons of them. Now once you're done, you're going to click done, and now you're going to select, go down, click Xbox Live, and click enable. Now what this is going to do is when you send a connection from your console to the router to Xbox Live and back, when it comes through, it's going to be doing all of that data and sending all of that data straight to your console without missing anything, without it being slow. Now you need to understand that what I said earlier was a little incorrect. It doesn't lose information, it just comes at a slower rate, which means your connection is slower. Now once this gets done here, and it shows me that we're good to go, alright, and once it gets done, it should show this again, because once you enable it, it sends it to it and then it resets it, that way you can use it again. Now if you look, it's still here, that way we know it's still in effect. Okay, now the next way you can do it, let me go ahead and reset this, that way we can start from scratch. 1 second. Okay, now once we're back in this screen, there's another option we can use which is a lot easier depending on your router and your settings and all of that. Go to static NAT, and you're going to want to use that MAC address, which was 7C, I believe. Once this loads up, takes just a second. Okay, now this screen will pop up. Now, if you look here, the static NAT device that you're wanting to use is actually going to be located here. Now the Xbox runs for me a 7C1E52, and that's the one I'm going to choose. Now you can also specify a IP address, which in this case is 10.0.0.9. As you can see, I've already done that. Now what this does is it enables a static NAT, which will allow any traffic to be put into the router. So now some people agree that this is bad, but if you're wanting to get an Xbox Live with a good connection, this is probably your only option. Now this is a lot easier than port forwarding because it's a simple, like 2 or 3 clicks, you just go here. Now again, this may be different depending on your router. Now you're going to go enable, and you'll see this pop up here. Enabled for 10.0.0.9. Now what this does is, like I said, it sets it to open, enables all traffic. Now note here, if your firewall is enabled, your firewall rules will take precedence over the services. Now what this does is if you do this and your firewall is enabled, it's going to cancel it out. It's just going to say, you know, this doesn't even matter. So make sure that your firewall is disabled before you enable a static NAT type. Now once this is done, you're going to want to go ahead and close this because it needs to activate it. Minimize this. And now we will go back to the Xbox and we will show you what the effects that happen. Alright, so once you go back to your Xbox, you're going to want to restart it, that way it reconnects to the router that is configured now, because if you don't connect to it again, it will not show the changes. So just to show you, I went back to my Xbox, and now the NAT type is open, and you can see it is the same IP address here and the same server address. Now you can go into Xbox Live and you can get on games, and you could be running either 3-bar or 4-bar with little lag, and now you can see it's still wireless, so Even if you're wired, the effects will still be the same. Now, there's a couple things I need to mention while I'm here, and those are, number one, in order to configure your router, you need a straight connection into the PC to the router, so you need an Ethernet. And second, you need some time, because this isn't, if you don't know what you're doing, this is not a easy task to do. Now, again, port forwarding needs to be your last resort. Setting a static NAT type for the IP address is a lot better method, and it's a lot quicker, because you have to remember that the ports are a great hassle, and it might result in you having to restart your router completely like I have before, because it wouldn't connect to anything after I got done with it. From personal experience, when you start playing Call of Duty and you have bad connection issues, the first thing you need to do is not to blame Xbox Live. Look at your router, look at how everything's set up, and look at your NAT type, because most of the time that is the problem. Now, depending on which game you play, you may need to forward ports for individual game, but not Xbox Live as a whole, and that is back to the port forwarding thing. But static NAT is the best way to go, and port forwarding is a secondary if that does not work. And there you go. There is how to open an NAT type on Xbox Live. Now, depending on which method that you did, sometimes you may get it to where you can't even connect back to the router to fix what you might have messed up. If this happens, there is a red button on the back of almost every router. Just hit it and then reconnect. It'll reconfigure and you're fine. So if you do mess up, do not worry. There is a failsafe. So, and there you have it. That's it. It's a very large population that has this problem. It's mostly an easy fix if you follow the steps, and a good outcome, because you can connect to more games, connect to more people, talk to more people on parties, and so on and so forth. And there is an NAT type that is open and ready to go on Xbox Live.